Then. Okay, next speaker is Ian Curnow, and Ian is the Executive Director, Fisheries in the Northern Territory, Department of Primary Industries. He is also the Chair of Australian Fisheries Management Forum, and as such, the role includes developing and promoting the best practice policy principles and techniques in managing fisheries. Ian has over 25 years' experience in the public sector across Australia and the state governments, with the past 19 years dedicated to fisheries management. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ian Curnow.
Thanks very much and good morning. At the last Seafood Directions Conference in Port Augusta, on behalf of the Australian Fisheries Management Forum, or AFMF, I outlined the future directions of fisheries management from a national perspective. This followed a commitment made by AFMF at the Seafood Directions Conference on the Gold Coast in 2011 to report back on progress made against key national priorities in fisheries management. As most people would be aware, each jurisdiction across Australia is responsible for managing their fisheries in line with the policy directions set by each respective government. Key drivers that influence management will therefore vary due to population and development pressures, levels of resourcing, and key policies or political drivers with the respective governments of the day. This presents a challenge when talking about national directions in management. That said, in reality there is a commonality in the issues being faced, and it makes sense for the various jurisdictions to share information on lessons learnt, keep in touch on new or innovative developments, avoid duplication in resources spent on covering the same ground, and improving consistency in approaches where possible. And I guess a case in point is where stocks may straddle jurisdictions, as the Senator talked about this morning. However, we've got the situation where many of the same fishermen may operate in both fisheries, yet have to operate under different rules, creating inefficiencies and increasing operating costs. AFMF is comprised of the heads of each jurisdictional fisheries agency, representatives from the FRDC, the Australian Government's Environment Department, CSIRO, and our colleagues from across the ditch in New Zealand also attend. As the responsibility for fisheries management rests with each of our 8 jurisdictions, AFMF is not and can't be a decision-making body, and its work priorities are developed through consensus. AFMF does, however, provide an informal network for sharing information between the various state, territory and federal government agencies involved in managing fisheries and aquaculture across Australia. Its roles include developing and promoting best practice policy principles, promoting implementation and adoption of best practice management, and strategically addressing the range and complexity of cross-jurisdictional fisheries responsibilities and issues through improved communication and collaboration. In essence, it's about using a collaborative approach to improve fisheries management and performance and ensure the best value from our fish resources. I should note AFMF is probably an unfortunate acronym, as it sounds a little bit like a dyslexic version of AFMA. And after the last presentation at last Seafood Directions, for the next 2 days I had people asking me what happened to James Finlay. So to be totally clear, AFMF and AFMA are not the same things. AFMF's statement of intent was initially devised to inform the commercial industry of where government fisheries agencies saw the priorities of management. I note the same key themes have now been reflected in the latest National Fishing and Aquaculture Research Development and Extension Strategy, with all fishing sectors recognising these key themes are equally applicable and important. So just as a quick reminder, AFMF's statement of intent identifies 4 key goals or themes. The first goal focuses on sustainability, and this has been the focus of an extensive work program over many years, and significant advances have been made around improving management and governance, improved reporting, knowledge and transparency. Many of our fisheries have world best practice frameworks in place, and there are numerous success stories in this space that can be used to help sell our story. At the same time, we cannot be complacent, as we still have some poor performing fisheries across the country. These have the potential to distort the public perception of the industry as a whole. It is therefore important agencies and industry work together to ensure that all fisheries have a work program in place to enhance the reputation of our fisheries. The second goal, security of access, remains a critical issue, with competition with other fishing sectors and other industries users who may compete for the same space or resource. Marine parks, Indigenous lands and waters may also add complexity in this space. These elements may encompass both jurisdictional and national governments, and a critical element in this is profiling the industry and promoting community understanding of its needs, practices and its value as an industry. In my view, the complexities and practical difficulties of resource access and allocation are now well understood, as are the various options and models to address them, and we need to get on with implementation. For some fisheries, particularly those that might be multi-sectoral and multi-jurisdictional, this will not be easy for decision makers, and some hard decisions will need to be made. However, at the same time, industry can't continue on operating in a climate of uncertainty. If the decision needs to be a particular sector's share is reduced or diminished, let's make that position clear and set up an operating framework that allows the fisheries to develop with a degree of certainty. Most jurisdictions are now getting on with this, with formal research sharing frameworks either in place or under active development. Profitability and economic performance of fisheries and aquaculture industries is now an area of key focus. All governments around Australia recognise the need for economic development, and most have policy agendas and programs in place to reduce red tape and administrative burden. In fisheries where contemporary management frameworks are in place that can protect sustainability and offer secure access, it means economic performance and profitability can now be the key focus. A number of agencies and jurisdictions are actively exploring how management settings may be optimised to generate maximum returns and profitability. FRDC has funded some great research in this space in recent years, based on framing management settings around maximising economic rather than sustainable yields. Another pleasing initiative that the Senator talked about earlier is the reviews being undertaken by the Department of Environment to shift low-risk fisheries with appropriate governance in place to have 10-year export approvals in place. This will provide greater certainty for industry, provide a clear signal to the community that our fisheries are sustainable and well managed, and provide savings in resources, both time and money, for both agencies and industry. Streamlining environmental approval processes for the aquaculture industry is also essential, as investors will go elsewhere if they need to wait several years for approvals. A number of jurisdictions have recognised this and moved to one-stop shops. Others have identified aquaculture zones as suitable for development to help fast-track these processes. It is important that the impacts of fishing and aquaculture are minimised, while at the same time recognising the broader impacts of development, pollution, habitat destruction and the changing climatic conditions on the health of our fisheries. While much of this work falls outside of the domain of fisheries agencies, work continues across most jurisdictions in continuing to improve fishing gears and practices to ensure that the impacts of fishing and aquaculture on unwanted species or habitats are minimised. Aquatic biosecurity and fish health remains an important area, with ongoing risks through increased international movements. Managing the spread or controlling a population of aquatic pests is complex and challenging. The low probability of eradication success, along with the exorbitant costs of eradication and control, means prevention is by far the most preferable means. Therefore, effective surveillance and diagnostic services will be pivotal in supporting a successful biosecurity system. Fisheries legislation across most jurisdictions contains objectives around maximising benefits or seeking optimal outcomes, and ultimately this is what agencies and governments are required to achieve. Hence, this is a key driver for national management and research programs. Clearly understanding what an optimal outcome is not easy, as is ascertaining what the broader community really wants or values, and it is too easy for vocal minorities to influence political decision making. The FRDC supports a lot of work in the socio-economic fields to help improve our understanding in this space. It's important to note that community attitudes also change over time, and it will be interesting to see how issues such as food security and consumer demands for sustainable, healthy and quality seafood will continue to affect these values in the coming years. Now, AFMF sent out its statement of intent to all industry groups last year, which included priority work areas under each goal and an update on the outcomes to date. These priority areas are being progressed in each management jurisdiction, or in some cases bilaterally between neighbouring jurisdictions. I would encourage the industry leaders across the country to review these key themes and priorities and discuss their progress with their relevant fishery agency. I would now like to briefly highlight the progress of a few truly national initiatives that have happened since the last seafood directions, and talk about some new priorities that are now currently being progressed by AFMF. By truly national, I mean that all 8 jurisdictions were actively engaged as partners and integrally involved in their development. One of the key national initiatives in terms of improving fisheries governance was the development of national harvest strategy guidelines. Well-designed harvest strategies can not only ensure the catches are managed to ensure sustainability, but also maximise economic performance, social outcomes and fishing experiences. The reference points and decision rules in a well-constructed harvest strategy ensure that catches are set objectively using the best available science and are less able to be influenced by external pressures. Since initially being presented at the last Seafood Directions in Port Lincoln, the national guidelines have now been endorsed by all jurisdictions. So we now have a nationally consistent framework and guidelines for fishery harvest strategies that can be applied across the full range of fisheries. A number of jurisdictions have now adapted these and also brought in a version specifically tailored for their own jurisdiction's circumstances. Last year, the second iteration of the Status of Key Australian Fish Stocks reports was released, bringing together data from all Australian jurisdictions in a single consistent document for direct comparison and analysis. The second edition featured an increase in the number of species assessed, and as future editions are developed, they will consider the inclusion of a broader socio-economic and environmental information. This is a major step forward in improving the transparency around reporting on Australian fisheries, and its development took over 2 years of collaborative effort from more than 80 marine scientists across state, territory and Commonwealth jurisdictions. States, again, are now aligning their reporting and adopting this consistency in reporting and terminology. And in combination, these two initiatives will help build consistency amongst all jurisdictions and help promote a clearer understanding across the community by providing definitions, a common language and important contextual information for everyone to use. This will make it easier to demonstrate the credentials of our fisheries and sell the story. A key challenge in delivering management services that are scaled to the size and profitability of the industry, while at the same time meeting the required standards to demonstrate the fishery is being managed in an ecologically sustainable manner. In terms of new national priorities, all members of AFMF have agreed that developing practical management arrangements for small fisheries is the number one priority. These fisheries are typically information and resource poor. Low-cost, practical management regimes for small-scale, low-value fisheries are desperately needed to ensure the long-term sustainability of these fisheries without the need for resource-hungry management and research frameworks. There appears merit in focusing on output regimes to provide the business cases to support investment. However, input regimes should also be considered to ensure the optimal approach is adopted for each fishery. These small fisheries can often include recreational and indigenous sectors in addition to commercial fishing. Many low-value, small-scale fisheries may have inherent traits of limited past engagement with fisheries management processes, levels of literacy, isolation and cultural issues, and all of these must be explicitly acknowledged and considered. Fisheries operating at or close to maximum harvest levels or with potential for high interaction with threatened and endangered species or significant environmental impacts may deserve and warrant a Rolls-Royce management framework. However, many of these smaller fisheries operate far below these levels of risk and cannot afford, nor should be expected to, meet the same requirements. Again, FRDC is funding some essential research projects in this space that are currently underway, and these outcomes will inform the development of pragmatic and a practical approach to management. It is entirely reasonable for industry to expect value for money from services, and this attracts a lot of scrutiny in states where cost recovery is in place. At the same time, governments are demanding greater efficiencies from departments, with declining funding allocations the norm. So it's therefore not surprising that a new priority work area for AFMF is shared services, as fisheries agencies seek ways to provide the most cost-effective services and avoid unnecessary duplication. A collaborative approach across fisheries research is already being pursued through national RD&E process to pursue a cost-effective service delivery and research. A number of service arrangements are already in place between some agencies, including things such as compliance services and vessel monitoring systems for data and monitoring purposes. So in recent months, AFMA has now established a shared services group to further explore opportunities in this space across management and compliance activities. The offshore constitutional settlement, which devolves management functions between the Australian government and the various states' territories, also adds to the complexity with a number of fisheries under joint authority arrangements. AFMA, not AFMF this time around, is working with the states and the territories to develop roadmaps to assist the transition to single jurisdictional management for a number of these joint authority fisheries. It is hoped that more streamlined and simplified arrangements may start to be introduced next year in priority fisheries. This will provide simpler and more timely and efficient management and decision making. On the back of the white paper for developing Northern Australia, the Australian Government has also indicated it is looking at devolving aquaculture management in Commonwealth waters to the states' territories, and a framework for this will be considered in the Australian Government's National Aquaculture Strategy that is expected to be delivered next year. So in summary, I think there's a great opportunity for industry to sell its story. It's a good one. While there is room for improvement in some fisheries, A commitment to improve and address any outstanding issues can be part of that story. Significant progress has been made in terms of sustainability across Australia's fisheries. The management and research tools are there: risk-based assessments, harvest strategies, bycatch strategies, and many of our fisheries already meet the best global standards. In short, the tools are there, but they need to be applied across all fisheries, and importantly, the outcomes need to be promoted so that the emotive cries of global overfishing do not overwhelm the success stories being undertaken across Australia. At the same time, there is a responsibility in governments and industry to work together to ensure these remaining fisheries are brought up to an acceptable standard such that their performance and the image of industry overall can be demonstrated to the public. There is certainly scope for improvements in communications, and together we can certainly do a better job at informing the community on the real status of our fisheries and the benefits our fishing industry delivers. And we look forward to the presentation on the new communication strategy later in the conference. With regard to resource sharing issues, the complexities of deciding optimal use are clear. However, it's also clear that these decisions won't get any easier by prolonged decision making. The mechanisms and tools, again, to resolve these things are available and they're ready to be applied. In some cases, hard decisions need to be made. However, procrastinating will only make them harder. With an increasing political focus on future food demands and food security, only time will tell whether these influence community attitudes around fishing and the optimal use of fish stocks. However, with sustainability and access assured and clear management objectives in place, fishery agencies and industry can focus on the important task of improving the viability and profitability of commercial fisheries. This must be the new priority for fisheries management. For management agencies, creating the right policy settings and providing an administrative framework that is efficient and cost-effective, but also provides long-term certainty around access, is a critical matter to ensure our seafood industries remain competitive, both domestically and globally. This will allow industry to do what it does best: innovate and focus on improving operating efficiencies, product quality, and market access opportunities. More streamlined decision-making processes may represent significant savings to both business and government, and it is important to improve timeframes for approvals that recognise and reward innovation and forward thinking and provide greater certainty for investors. In my view, the historic risk-averse nature of governments is changing, particularly within fisheries agencies, around legislation, decision-making and accountability. It is recognised that there are costs and inefficiencies involved in such an approach, and there is merit to move to a more practical risk-based approach based upon levels of impacts rather than attempting to micromanage every conceivable impact. Importantly, this is a matter not just for fishery agencies, as a range of government agencies and processes, such as environment agencies and planning departments, who may have competing policy agendas, can also impact on fishing and aquaculture businesses. If governments want productive industries, this alignment across agencies is essential. This will require strong leadership at both jurisdictional and national levels to improve the recognition of the fishing industry and push for whole-of-government approaches to these matters. I look forward to listening to the presentations over the next 2 days, and note that following this conference, AFMF will review its current statement of intent to ensure that its management goals and work plans remain contemporary against industry directions and requirements. This updated statement will be resent to industry associations, and I encourage leaders to follow up with their management agencies in their jurisdictions as to how those areas most relevant to them will be progressed. Taking our industry forward and making the most of these opportunities will require strong industry leadership at both the jurisdictional and the national levels to improve the recognition of the fishing industry and push for whole-of-government approaches to these matters. Thanks very much.